I just wanted to talk about this because Beige Frequency is a channel that's been around for a long time and always makes great stuff, like documentary style breakdowns. And he's really interesting. He's done some on Anthony Cumia is probably his most famous, and he's talked about other comedy specials. And in the comedy world, he's a great documentarian, kind of like Porcelain, but a little more serious and more critical, I guess, than Porcelain. And I just wanted to promote this, not that Beige Frequency needs it, but I wanted to let you guys know this was out there because he takes a more critical angle than I did on some of the comedians other than Burr and Whitney, which I think is deserved, and I think he makes a lot of good points. My angle with that was always, like, if you want someone to argue the human rights atrocities that happen in Saudi Arabia, I'm not that guy. You can go a lot of other places to be informed as to what's going on over there. It's just not my wheelhouse, really. So, like, I'm not going to sit here and argue when Chris DiStefano says, like, oh, it was a great time and women could drive over there and all that shit. I'm not, arguing every point of that. But Beige Frequency actually does a very good job and kind of explained why you shouldn't go that lightly on a lot of these people. And I think it's a good point. So let's check out. I just have like 2 or 3 clips here. And you guys should go check out the whole thing. It's part 1. It's only about 45 minutes. And then at the end, he does tease that other comedians that weren't mentioned in this episode are getting their own episode. And based on the list that he went through, I believe that's Burr, Whitney, and probably Andrew Schultz. So I look forward to that as well.
Especially because this event was a blatant attempt, in a long, long list of them, to whitewash the reputation of Saudi Arabia, which is why there has been such a ferocious backlash to so many comedians participating in this event. Whatever they may say, they have lent their names and reputations to a propaganda effort by the Saudi government, which is why I've wanted to make this documentary. I understand how shameless and hypocritical comedians are, and I know that invariably almost all of them will criticize someone else for doing exactly what they did. That can't be countenanced. These are people who make a living from proffering their opinions and insights. Largely these days, it's in the form of barely comedic podcasts where they bloviate about real-life social and political issues. Some of them have even directly platformed major political figures of our time and may have played a role in getting them elected. This Riyadh Comedy Festival situation is such a glaring black mark on their moral character, and frankly just their judgment, that they shouldn't ever be allowed to open any of their stupid mouths about any social issue without being reminded of it. While that is unrealistic, we can make sure that their inevitable backsliding and hypocrisy will be immortalized in some way forever.
And I said that the first time we talked about Burr, where, like, I don't want this to be a thing that just goes away and they never have to address it, really. Because while, like, I accepted Louis and Aziz and some of these guys saying, like, hey, it's a difficult thing, and I thought a lot about it, and I do acknowledge. I gave them credit for acknowledging why people were upset, just because Burr and Whitney's reactions were so egregious, like so drastically bad, that it got me to hear like Louis' explanation and be like, all right, like, hey, he acknowledged it. There are things he's ignoring, and I even said when we covered those, like, Louis and Aziz never mentioned the money. They kind of talked about it like it was a peace mission of some kind. And again, I don't know enough about what Saudi Arabia is doing right now to argue with them. Like, their channel's much better suited for that. I'm too stupid. I'm a very dumb guy. So you don't come here for that, really. But Beige Frequency points some of that stuff out, and I do think it's true. It's not something that should be let go. So I wanted to highlight him talking about Chris DiStefano as well, because that's someone we went pretty light on and said that he had a good response. Beige Frequency has kind of a different angle on it.
Yeah, this next one is Chrissy D.
Yeah.
DiStefano's perspective on the Riyadh gig is interesting to me because he gave 2 conflicting accounts of his decision to perform on 2 different podcasts. The first came on an episode of 2 Bears 1 Cave from July 21st that he was guest hosting with the $40,000 chocolate fraudster, Stavros Halkias. During a riff about life insurance, Chris throws in that he's got a gig in Saudi Arabia.
He's a comedian, he's got a show in Saudi Arabia, and his cholesterol's 400.
When Stav asks if he's going, Chris then flips it back and asks Stav if he's doing the gig.
Are you going to Saudi Arabia?
Are you going to do that gig?
To which Stav says that he can't.
I
Can't do it. Can't take the Saudi money.
Do it,
I get it.
man. I can't.
This is another theme you will see from several of the comedians when they bring up the festival. The way they try to find a back door into talking about it, and then spin the issue around to their interlocutor. This isn't even the only time Chris specifically does it either, but I'll get to that in a minute. While riffing about Saudi Arabia with Stav, Chris essentially blames his wife for making him take the festival gig for the money.
I didn't want to do it either. I was contemplating. I was like, maybe not. I was like, I can't do it. And then she was like, you're going to take that fucking money.
Yeah.
However, shortly after this, Chris makes it clear that he understands the retrograde nature of the country by saying that his wife cannot go with him to the gig.
There's no question Jasmine can't come.
Chris continues to prove that he comprehends how brutal the country is by making jokes about how his wife would come back from Saudi Arabia headless.
If you do come, just know you're coming back headless.
Yeah.
And suggests that he would join in on stoning Jewish comedians if it meant getting back home safely.
I was like, I'm going to grab a stone too. I'm going to join the mob and get out of here. I got to get home. You're all pieces of shit. We're in a stone Sam.
Yeah. Like I said during the We Might Be Drunk segment, these are jokes, but they also leave no room for the excuse that comedians like DeStefano weren't aware of what was going on in Saudi Arabia.
Jessica Kirsten's getting it first. Right? What the hell?
He's not leaving, I'll tell you that.
Oh,
It's gonna be hard to do crowd work with that burqa.
Everyone.
They know. They were just willing to look the other way in exchange for a big enough pay.
Yeah, that's a point I think I overlooked too much, and it's why I wanted to say, hey, go watch this documentary. Because like I gave Chris a lot of credit for just coming out and being like, I did it for the money. And so much so, in fact, that I kind of glossed over the fact that they all knew what they were doing. They can't really act like, and again, like as Beige Frequency says, they're fucking around. Like they are jokes, but you can't be like, oh, I didn't know they did that over there. You know, oh, I didn't know anything about these human rights violations or anything like that. Like they obviously knew about it because they were joking about it, and it's something that factored into their. Chris is literally having a discussion with Stavros, where Stavros is like, I can't do it. So, and Chris doesn't say why. You know, Chris isn't dumbfounded by that. So they do all know the ramifications of going, which is something I kind of glossed over again because a guy like Burr's reaction was so insanely hypocritical that it got me to go easy on a lot of the other guys, which is why I wanted to say shout out to Beige Frequency for doing that because I think he makes a lot of good points. He also shows some of the basically like PR that Chris DeStefano did. And this wasn't just about Chris DeStefano. He talks about most of the people that went over there. Jessica Kirsten, Normand and Maril, Louis, Chappelle, Jim Jeffries. I'm trying to think of some of the other names he highlights. But basically all of them except for Schultz, Burr, and Whitney, which I think will be the next video. So that should be interesting. Beige Frequency always does a really good job. Maybe you guys will disagree with some of it. Maybe you'll disagree with some of what I said. But I do think it's worth watching. And I do think, like, as much as some people, I'm sure, are sick of the Riyadh talk, I think it shines a glaring light on comedians. We just heard Brendan Schaub talk about how comedians are disloyal and will say whatever for money. This is a much better example than Schaub was trying to give. This is where it's like, it's hard to follow some of these people anymore. Like, and Burr, for me, Burr was the one where I'm like, you just went against everything you ever represented and had no explanation. That's the crazy thing. Is at least Maril and Normand like kind of shut their mouths about it. Like they took the money and said, like, oh, we went to Saudi Arabia and just breezed past it, never really talked about it again. Burr made it seem like it was a peace mission he was on. As I always say, well, don't take the money then. You know? Like Greenpeace doesn't pay $1.5 million to go over there and build houses or whatever the fuck they do, you know?
Go to blindmike.net for everything Blind Mike. Look at me. I did it. Kragers did it.